Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Jimmy Walters, a proud St. John's alum and current campus minister at St. John's on the Queens campus. And I welcome you and I thank you for joining us for this two-part series titled Vincentian Dreaming of a Better Tomorrow. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be a part of this, and also to thank the Office of St. John's Alumni Relations for the incredible work that they have been doing since we've been battling this pandemic, providing wonderful resources to keep you connected to our mission and our fine university, as well as the wonderful work that they're always doing to keep you connected to St. John's. This is an exciting time for us to be together to connect to that Vincentian charism, that Vincentian spirituality that you had the opportunity to be a part of your higher education experience as a student at St. John's. And so today we're going to take a little bit of time to reconnect to that mission, to reconnect to how God is speaking to you. Obviously, these are very difficult times. They've been so for quite a while. And so God is giving us this opportunity in the midst of the darkness, in the midst of the challenges, to reconnect to who God is to us, to who God is to our world, and for you to use your gifts and talents, for you to be your true self, the way St. Vincent was, the way St. Louise was, the way Blessed Frederick Ozanam was, as they allow God to work through them to change the world. And so that is what we're going to do today. And again, I thank you for joining us. So really we have a few goals. The first is to reconnect with ourselves, to reconnect with our God, whoever God is to you. God, you can use different words. So God might work, but maybe it's source or creator. Might be another name, higher power. Whoever that is that you pray to, that you feel most comfortable. We're talking about the same being, the same thing, but it's really this source of all that we are. So let's reconnect to God today. And I'll use the word God, but feel free to interchange a word that feels most comfortable to you. It's also an opportunity for us to reconnect to the St. John's mission, the mission that made your St. John's education and your St. John's experience so special. You know, working at the university and being with so many students and seeing alumni come back, it's incredible how people talk about their love of St. John's and how they were able to still feel what they felt when they were a student. And I believe that's our mission, that just it's in the air on our campuses. And hopefully today, in some small way, we can reconnect to that. Well, I hope through this time together is that you're once again inspired by this Vincentian spirit. What does it mean to you to be a part of this Vincentian family that is global, this family that is committed to encountering Jesus Christ, encountering God in the spirit of St. Vincent? We'll talk about that today. And then the third part and goal of this time together is that you're motivated to act, that you leave this time together feeling inspired, but also feeling motivated to do something for someone else. When we come together with our part two, we'll be talking about practical steps, using a couple of very clear activities to help you put that into action. Our hope is that after today, after this time together, you will be inspired and motivated. But a little bit about myself. I am a 4-time graduate of St. John's, and so I like to say it's the Grand Slam breakfast. I think Denny's has that, but it's just been a blessing to be a part of the St. John's community for some time and to be educated at this university. My undergraduate was in 2004, and then went into a master's in theology and school counseling, and then a doctorate in education, where I have focused on the faith development of students in higher education. My current role at the university is I'm the director of the Catholic Scholars Program, which is a wonderful faith-based leadership program that brings about 120 students to the campus to grow in their Catholic faith, to be leaders on our campus and our community, and that when they leave the university, they're bringing their faith into their variety of vocations. The students are inspiring. We are welcoming our 9th cohort this fall, and it's just been a wonderful privilege to be a part of. It was founded and inspired by Dr. Pam Shea Burns, who many of you may have known. She saw this as a way to bring the church alive here at St. John's, and to the way we are proud that our athletic teams wear St. John's on their chest on our basketball courts and baseball fields and soccer fields. This was a way that our Catholic leaders would wear St. John's on their chest as leaders in our faith, in our churches, in our high schools, wherever God might be calling them. And so it's a great blessing to be a part of that program and to work with some wonderful campus ministers who care greatly for this Catholic formation that we all are committed to. I'm also the director of residence ministry, so I work with a team of campus ministers who collaborate with Residence Life to serve our 3,000 plus students who live on campus, to make sure that they have time and opportunities to experience who God is to them, to include that faith formation in their higher education. I'm also a faculty member in the Institute for Course Studies, teaching Discover New York, and then also in the School of Education, teaching a couple of classes in the doctoral program. You see some images there that are important to me. The first is our church on campus. When I was a student, as well as those who were students when I was, there was no church. We had the simple yet beautiful Our Lady of Lourdes Chapel, where it was again, a very special place to those of us who worship there. But then this incredible church was built, and I have been praying there since. I have walked with students on their faith journey. It's also the place where I met my wife for the first time. We saw each other in that church, and 2.5 years later, we got married and baptized our first daughter there, and God willing, be able to baptize our second daughter. And so you see that second image is a picture of my wife and I. This July 18th, we'll be celebrating our 10th year anniversary. So again, a very special time during a difficult time. And then you see my two children, Shay, who will be 4 in September, and Lily, who was born 8 weeks ago. So having a child during a pandemic was never the plan. It certainly brought a variety of emotions and challenges, but what a blessing to have her in our life, and thank God she and her mother are healthy. The other thing that I did not expect to do during a pandemic was to launch my first book, titled Dreams Come True, Discovering God's Vision for Your Life, published by New City Press. It came out in late April. Much of what we're going to talk about today, and certainly in the second part, is inspired by this book, but it's launching it during a pandemic was not the plan last summer when we were working on the manuscript. But it's, again, part of my vocation, very much inspired by the St. John's mission. And I hope that what you hear today, if you like it and if you're interested, you would consider learning more about this book and what it offers. And so that's a little bit about me, and I will share some more as we go through this. But again, very thankful for the opportunity to be doing this today. And so we'll begin with the Vincentian question. It's where Vincent was asked when he was surrounded by people suffering, surrounded by a man who was dying, who did not have the opportunity to learn about God's love for him. It's what he was asked when he did not know what to do, and people were coming to his church and struggling. And it was the question saying, what must be done? Vincent, what must be done? What can you do? And it is that question that is echoed through the years to us of saying, what must we do? Now we know how Vincent responded. Vincent brought people together, founded communities to serve the poor. And we are called as members of the Vincentian family to do the same. And what we'll talk about in this webinar, and certainly in next time, are how are you going to do it? How are you going to use your gifts and talents to respond to that question of what must be done? And that question is asked today during a very difficult time. We are not at any shortage of seeing people suffering, perhaps in our own homes, in our communities, in our places of worship, in places that we work. We are flooded with images. And there are several images here. That image in the top left is from Philadelphia of people lining up for food. To see people who are not sure when the next meal is going to come. Poverty has been a major issue in our country and certainly across our world for some time. But during a pandemic, it becomes so much worse. And so we're mindful of that, of the blessings that we have, but also how people are just trying to live and survive for themselves and for their families. Top image on the right of the recent protests of people yearning for justice, yearning for equality. And how can we be a voice that is supporting that is advocating for equality and for systemic change and the end of anti-racist behavior and institutional structures that support that. Bottom left are our healthcare workers, those individuals who during this pandemic for the past several months and right now who are battling this virus and caring for people and risking their own lives. And I included the elderly in that bottom right-hand corner because I think we're in this time of isolation. You think of how people in nursing homes have been one of the most hit in terms of death and sickness. Also those who are not having the familiar company that they might have had before the pandemic, those who are alone. And even those who are maybe not so seasoned, but during this time of isolation, this time of quarantining, there is this real loneliness that we're seeing more and more of. And these images, as well as so many other injustices and people who are mourning or at loss, they're asking us, they're asking us to do something. And Vincent has this great quote: "Who will excuse us before God for the loss of such a great number of people who could be saved by the slight assistance we could give them?" We have the power, we have the opportunity to do something to help people survive, to help people live. And that is what our Vincentian mission calls us to. It is what Vincent responded to. It is what we as members of the Vincentian family, as alumni of this Vincentian institution, are called to do in wherever God has us at this point in human history. Another way of saying it simply is, this is the time to answer prayers. People go to bed at night, people are reflecting, praying for someone to do something for them, someone to offer a helping hand, someone to provide a meal, someone to pick up the phone and call them. This is the time for you, for me, for us to answer prayers. Let's talk about what that means a little bit further. Well, let's do it in a fun way. Imagine if there was no Beatles, the band. In the top left-hand corner, you see the image of that movie Yesterday. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's actually if the Beatles never existed, except for a few people who remember them. It's a world without the Beatles and their countless hits and the impact they had on music. But just imagine if one of the Fab Four did not have the courage to use their gifts and talents, to write music, to sing songs, to play an instrument. Imagine what we would be deprived of. And you can say this for any band or for any artist in whatever form. But when we think of the Beatles, who we just assume, we just have been exposed to them so much, imagine if Paul McCartney never has the courage to sing his song, to never write a song like Let It Be. What we would be missing out on. How many people would lack the healing that music has brought? Now think of your own life. Think of the ways that you have not sang your song. And for a number of reasons. Perhaps it's not a matter of courage, perhaps it's circumstance or other responsibilities that you've had. But what we're called to today during this time of great change is to say, what can you do to use those gifts and talents that God gave you, not just to bring greater joy and peace into your life, but to lift other people up the way the Beatles did through their music. So it is time for you to sing your song. As proud alumni of St. John's University, what is your song? What is it that you are not currently giving, or maybe you can give more to this world, being authentic to who you are and responding to a need? And that is what we're going to get at today. And so we're going to do that through three simple ways. One is reconnecting with God, and we'll have an opportunity to reflect and pray. Perhaps you pray often, perhaps you haven't prayed in a while. And prayer can mean many different things. But we're going to take a couple of minutes to simply reflect and to be connecting to who God is to you. Second, we're going to rediscover your true self. Now, that is a lifelong process. That takes a long time. But we're going to chip away at that a little bit. And then third, recommit to service. Very much in the Vincentian tradition, finding ways to help those who desperately need our listening ears, our supporting hand, our prayers. And so we'll delve into that. Whenever I present about anything spirituality, I like to give this foundational truths slide as just giving you a sense of how I approach life, how I approach our faith. And the first is that God has unconditional love for us. That no matter what we might have done in our lives, no matter what decisions we have made, no matter what might be done to us, God loves us unconditionally. My favorite parable or scriptural passage is the prodigal son. That no matter what that younger son did, or that what that older son did not understand, God loves them. God goes running, or God being the father figure, goes running to the son as he returns back, revealing how God loves us. And so that father figure tells us who God is. That no matter where we are in our lives, that God just wants us to come home. And so that sometimes our past decisions, our past behavior, we might not feel worthy. We might not feel like God loves us the way that we want God to. No, that's false. God is within us. God is among us. And God is just waiting for us to be in relationship to God. The second truth is God's amazing grace. We see it often in moments of crisis, in moments of challenge, how often we just get a strength to survive, a strength to move through the storm, and that's God's grace. And so in your difficulties in life, whatever they might be, ask God for that and pay attention to how God is answering that request. Key to this, you've heard me say this a couple times already, is that we have gifts and talents that God gave us. There are some things that you can do that I cannot do. While I love to sing, if you've seen me do karaoke before, you know that is not a gift of mine. But for some other people, they can bring people to tears in a good way by using their voice in song. Whatever your gift and talent is, God gave us that not just for ourselves, not just to kind of keep into the privacy of our homes, but to share with the world. So a responsibility comes with that. We have, the next point, we have seen this perhaps in one of the greatest ways in our country in the past couple months, is that our world is hurting. Injustice is almost everywhere that you look. And there is a real call to unity and to call to justice. The book that I wrote was published by New City Press, and they're a part of the Focolare movement. And their mission, which was started in World War II, pulls from the scriptural passage, "May they all be one." And everything that the Focolare community does builds around that idea of unity, that we are all children of God. And that is our starting point. And so when we look at what is a very divided world, on social media, it feels even greater. On TV, it feels perhaps even greater than that. But we are called as people of faith to unite and also to find justice, that people are treated equally. And perhaps that will continue to surface as we are together today. And then finally, when all is lost, serve. In those moments when we feel down, we feel sad, nothing is going to make us feel better than to do something for somebody else. I think that is one of the secrets that we get from the Vincentian family. And when we meet people who are living the Vincentian charism, they're so joyful. And that doesn't mean they don't have difficulties in their lives. It doesn't mean they don't have challenges. But they know that the secret recipe is service. They know it's helping somebody in need. And that's what we are all called to do. And so the first part of our day, of talking about this idea of connecting to changing the world, is we must reconnect with God. We must allow God to be in our lives and to ask that question, how do you pray? And perhaps if your way of praying is going to a place of worship, that's not so possible right now, or if it is, it's very limited. And so we're challenged to explore prayer in different ways and to see prayer as, yes, in devotional prayer and in reading kind of formed prayer, but also being in relationship with God through all things. In nature, in the quiet, in the silence, in reading spiritual writings, and listening to song. But allowing ourselves time to speak to God and for God to speak to us. And there's this great quote from Vincent that captures that. We'll take a moment to just read this idea of another way of saying to fill our cup with the Spirit. When you've met people who are very prayerful, very spiritual, we feel this, right? You could just feel it overflowing from them. And that's not just meant for the saints of the world or for those who are called to a specific life. It's meant for all of us. And so what I like to do is give us an opportunity to pray, to give us an opportunity to kind of bring all that's on our heart, all that we might be struggling with or are facing as challenges, all of the joys and all of our blessings, to bring it to prayer. And you're going to hear that famous Beatles song, Let It Be, playing, and it's from a version of from this group called Gentry, which are just beautiful harmonies. And allow the song to be the backdrop to what God might be saying to you at this moment in time. So take a few minutes to pray, maybe for the second time or third time today, or maybe the first time in a long time. So let's just take a few minutes to just pray together.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be,
And let us pray. God, we thank you for this time to be together today. Thank you for this opportunity to listen to you, to ask that you speak to us and that we listen to you on our hearts. Amongst all our anxieties and our need to control, we hear the message of letting it be. We trust in you. We trust that you are in control. And that, like the St. Vincent de Paul and St. Louise de Marillac and Blessed Frederick Ozanam and all the Vincentian saints, that you will guide us, that you will lead us into service, you will lead us into discovering you, especially in the face of the poor and in those who need us. Be with us as we continue this time together. And we thank you again for this opportunity. Amen. So to bring this part to a close, we turn to the words of St. Louise de Marillac. It would be well if every morning each sister would individually pray for the blessing of our good God in order that they might act in the manner of his Son while he was on earth, as they carry out the works of charity to which they have been called. But better yet, they should pray that the same Spirit that acted in him should act through them. And I love this quote because sometimes we separate Jesus from us, we separate God from us, we separate the saints from us, but it's the same Spirit that moves through them, that moves through us. And as members of the Vincentian family, what a blessing that is that we find this path of service, this path of simplicity, this path of charity that binds us, that connects us. And for us to serve and to be true to ourselves and to respond to the many people in our world, and in our communities, and in our home that need us now more than ever. So that transitions us to our second part of rediscovering our true self. And perhaps no one in the past 100 years has done more than the great mystic Thomas Merton on the idea of our true self. He says, if I find him, being God, I will find myself. And if I find my true self, I will find him. This idea that God lives within us and God made us in this very special and specific way. But as we grow, we are shaped by different factors, by our parents, by society, by religion, all these other ways that form us and shape us. And at some point in our lives, often in moments when things are really difficult, we start to chip away at that. And we begin to understand what makes sense, what is true, and who God is that lives through us. And that's what I think happened to St. Vincent in that moment when he asked that question to Madame Gandhi when he was surrounded by sadness and poverty and death. And her question back was, what must be done? And that helped him connect to his true self to say, let me use my gift of speaking to motivate and inspire people. Let me use my gift of bringing people together in organization to provide food and medicine and clothes for the poor. And that is the beauty of crisis and challenge, because when life rocks us, and a pandemic does that, when we are faced with the amount of racial injustice that has been building up to the past couple of months, it shakes us when we see death on our TV, when we see people in tears just hoping for something different. It changes us, and it invites us to look in and again to reconnect to who we are and how God lives through us. And so I want to talk for a moment about this nurse named Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a book called 5 Regrets of the Dying, A Life Transformed by the Dearly Departed. And for years, she worked in a hospice unit. And if you've had the opportunity to be in a hospice unit and having someone in your life pass away, you realize what a sacred space that is, what a sad space that is, and how wonderful those nurses and doctors are who bring people to that next part of their life. And so she wrote a book, and she found 5 themes that people on their last days and last moments were saying that were consistent. And this is one of the quotes that she pulls, about the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life expected, the life others expected of me. And that was the most common theme that she heard, that people were not able to live true to themselves. And she says, folks, like, don't be those people. Like, you have opportunity, you have life ahead of you. Do something. She goes on to say, but when people realize that life is almost over and look back clearly on it, so many dreams have gone unfulfilled. And most people have not even honored even half of their dreams and had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made. Listen to this. Health brings a freedom very few people realize until they no longer have it. I don't know about you, but during this pandemic, fearful of what was going to happen to me in my health, being a severe asthmatic, worried greatly about getting sick. My wife, also an asthmatic, but being pregnant and bringing the baby into this world. The preciousness of health that maybe we do take for granted, this pandemic has flipped on its head. And then knowing people who have died, seeing so many members of our university community who have suffered from this virus, we cannot take health for granted. But we also cannot take this life and the dreams that we have and seeing these days, however long we have, as an opportunity to use them well. So we are not leaving this world with regret. And I think it's what Bronnie Ware tries to get us at, into using our life while we have it to chase our dreams and to bring our dreams to fruition. And so the question is, if you could do one thing, what would you do? You have your commitments, you have your responsibilities, you have your job, or you have, maybe you were furloughed or you were laid off, and now you're trying to figure out kind of what's next for you and trying to survive. Maybe you have full health, maybe you have limited health. And obviously there are many other factors that impact who we are in our current situation. But if you could do one thing in your life, what would you do? It's a key question. And when we talk next time on the second part of this webinar series, we'll do some activities to delve into that. But I wanted to turn to a member of our St. John's University community who passed away a few years ago, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Wayne was a professor in the School of Education at St. John's back in the 70s. He went on to write over 100 books. You would be most familiar with him probably from the PBS specials that he did in the 90s and in the 2000s. But he tells this incredible story about people who had a loss of job and then the opportunity that came from that to bring their dreams to life. So it's only a couple minutes. I just wanted to welcome Wayne in this recording that he had from a podcast a number of years ago to help put this into further context.
I remember being in New York City and doing an interview not too long ago, and there was a radio station that had just changed formats. And they had gone from talk radio, which I had done many interviews at this station over the years, to gospel music. And so everybody that was on the staff at this radio station, some 30 people, were all told the day that I was coming there to do an interview that they had all been let go. And everybody was walking around and they were all depressed and they were all upset. And every time someone would come up to me and say, "Oh, Wayne, isn't this awful? I've been here for 22 years and I just lost my job." And I would say, "Congratulations." And they look and say, what's the matter with you? How could you mean congratulations? I just lost my job. And I said, yes, but within a certain amount of time, probably within a year, you'll be in a place that is much better than where you are now. And it was almost like God was trying to tell you something, but you wouldn't listen. It's time to change. It's time to walk down another street. What is your dream? And you sit down with each one of these people and you ask them, what would you really like to be doing? Rather than working here at this particular rate. And most of them said, I'd like to have my own business, or I would like to do some writing over here. I've always had some ideas about writing. One guy said that he wanted to just do an opera. He'd always wanted, and he's been working on an opera like Mr. Holland, remember, in Mr. Holland's Opus. But he could never get himself the courage to do it because he was always going into the radio station every day in New York. And then I saw him about a year and a half after that and he was getting his opera published, which he couldn't have done if, it's like this intelligence that we think is conspiring against us is something that we have to understand works with us. But you have to have infinite patience and trust. And when you have, and the reason it says infinite patience produces immediate results, the reason it says this is because the immediate result of your infinite patience is peace. You retreat in peace and you let the universe handle the details. And after all, that's what it's about, living your life at peace.
And isn't that the song again, Let It Be, of just giving up that control and trusting, as Wayne would say, the universe, but also God and creator and source, and whatever word best captures God for you. And so perhaps during this time you've lost your job, or you know someone who's lost their job. Perhaps this time has caused you to live differently. And we can look at it as a negative. We can look at it as great difficulty. And of course, there was aspects of that that are true. But what we're being challenged to look at here is, how can that not be a negative? How can that be, as Wayne says, an opportunity for us to walk down a different street? That we might look back at this time and say, what a blessing it is. There are two of my favorite saints, in addition to St. Vincent and St. Louise, and hopefully one day St. Blessed Frederick Rosenham, are St. Francis and St. Ignatius. And what was similar to both of them is that they had moments of isolation. They were both in war as soldiers, thinking that was going to be their purpose, their life, and they got hurt. And Francis was first caught captive, and he was in jail for a while, and he got sick and was limited and isolated. And it was during that time of isolation, a time where all their dreams kind of came to a crash. And then they discovered God's dream for them in their times of isolation. And their lives were never different. And we're still talking about them in some ways hundreds of years later. There are communities and people who live in their footsteps. And it all goes back to those moments of isolation, those moments when they were knocked down. Outside the Basilica in Assisi, there's a statue of Francis returning with his head down, bent over on a horse. And, it's not the triumphant Francis that he thought he was going to be, but it's Francis who was humbled, who was able to finally hear how God was speaking to him. And so if you have been feeling difficulties in your life and challenges in your life, what an opportunity it is for us to kind of turn the page and say, how might God be speaking to me in this moment to change my life for the better? And that's the invitation before all of us. And then finally, the third way of doing this is to serve. Vincent says, let us love God, but let it be with the strength of our arms and with the sweat of our brows. And so we have to work for others. We have to help others. I am so humbled and amazed by the people in Brooklyn at Bread and Life, a soup kitchen that has continued to serve those who are dealing with food and housing insecurity throughout the pandemic. And they've had to do it differently. They've had to serve in a way to keep everyone safe. But they still provide medical care. They still provide food every day. An incredible amount of work to do that. And so what are ways that you are called to serve, that you are able to help others? And perhaps it is at soup kitchens and ways to collect food and provide those basic needs. But there are also people in your life that you can serve. There are phones that you could pick up and call folks, or write a letter to someone who you haven't spoken to. There are ways that you can advocate for others, certainly during this time of unrest toward anti-racism. Like, what are ways that you're even informing yourselves about leaders who are going to make decisions for society to help those who are currently being persecuted or limited? How are you finding ways to be an agent of change yourself in that Vincentian commitment to service? Because as we said earlier, when we serve, we find a joy to get us out of the funk that we might be in, or out of the difficulty, to be able to make a difference. So that idea of how can you serve? And that is a question that I ask you to take with you, to consider and to think about ways that you can do that today, ways that you can do that tomorrow. And then when we talk at the second part of this series, we'll actually come up with some real practical ways and some steps that you'll be able to put into action. So begin that process of reflection, and we'll be able to delve into that a little bit more next time. And so this is time for you to sing your song. It is time for you to look at your life in a different way, the way Vincent did so many years ago when he was surrounded by such suffering, and he was hurting and not knowing what to do. And that question was, what must be done? And Vincent's answer was, I need to help those who are poor. And he did it his way. How are you going to do it your way? So to review what we've talked about today, this idea of how important it is to reconnect with God, to find time to pray and be in relationship with your higher power, to rediscover your true self, to be faithful to who you are, to do what you were meant to do, and then to recommit to service, to use those gifts and talents that God gave you to serve other people. When we come together next time, which will be live, so we'll have a chance to interact more, we'll talk about how are you going to change the world? And we're going to use 4 steps that are inspired by the Dreams Come True book that I'm blessed to have written to guide us in that part. And so as a tease for that, these are the steps: discovering your true self, discovering what brings you joy in your life, what might have brought you joy in your life in the past that you haven't given enough attention to since. Then we'll dream together of a better tomorrow, using those gifts to change the world. And then we get practical, right? We're going to design something that you can do this month, this year, and then deliver, which will be leading you to put it into action in some way. I've had great success in using these 4 steps with our students, with colleagues, with principals and superintendents in the Catholic school system, presented nationally on this with the spiritual context. And I'm grateful that I have the chance to share it with you when we come together next time. And so, as a way of closing this, I'd like to invite you, when you get off of this webinar and have a chance to catch your breath, before you go to bed, just do one thing that you love today. If you used to love to draw. If you love to dance, put on your favorite song and dance. If you like to bake, maybe make it and give it to someone. Just do one thing that you love and do it today. And pay attention to how you feel after you do it. So that's your homework for today. And we'll revisit that next week when we come together. Just so more information about myself, I do have a website, drjimmywalters.com, and several times a week I offer some spiritual writing. We also have my contact information. I'm on all those different social media platforms, so you can follow me that way if you wish. And then, of course, if you're interested in the book Dreams Come True, you can get it on Amazon. There's a quote from Dennis Holzschneider, who is the former president of DePaul University, a proud alum of St. John's, and now the president of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. And he said, Dreams Come True isn't just written, it's curated. So many voices, so much wisdom, all opening us up to God's possibilities. And so if you are interested, please consider learning more about this model and this book from Dreams Come True. And so, to be continued, I will see you soon. I thank you again for your time. You will be in my prayers, and I ask that you pray for me and my family as well as we will get through this very difficult time together. Let's see it as opportunity, see it as a way to listen better to how God might be calling us to change the world. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next time.